It is my pleasure to welcome J. Kirk Richards,
Thank you.
one of the most well-known LDS artists. He comes to Rexburg with his new exhibit, The Trumpet Shall Sound. Kirk, welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. So tell us about this new exhibit that you created, The Angels and Messengers in the Bible. How did that come up?
Well, I was invited to exhibit here at BYU-Idaho, and I can't remember exactly how long ago that was.
Was it a year and a half ago or so?
A year and a half.
Yeah.
So I wanted to create some new work for this show, and had been wanting to do a series of paintings about angels and messengers in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought this would be the right place to do it. So set to work on these paintings, and here we are.
Yeah.
I think, you start out with an idea and work towards it, and things change. Obviously, it's not exactly the way that I'd planned it from the beginning. Just like paintings, any work of art changes.
Yeah.
But it's fun to see what we were able to put together.
Yeah, and they are magnificent. And they're beautiful.
Thank you.
And I'm so excited to show that off to visitors this coming month. So tell us, when did you wanted to become an artist?
I think a lot of kids love art. I'd say most kids draw a lot.
Yeah.
And I remember in elementary school illustrating books for my English projects, and even for some of my siblings for their homework. But I didn't really, I think it really sped up for me in high school when I convinced my parents, or persuaded them, I should say, to let me trade in my music lessons for art lessons. And they found an art teacher for me. And
Very supportive parents.
yeah, it was difficult for my mom, who's a music teacher, to see me change focus from music to art. But she knew that I loved it, and supported that transition.
Yeah.
And then I committed to a career as an artist when I attended college at BYU Provo. My freshman year, I took a figure drawing class, and I loved it, and I just, at that point decided that this is the direction I needed to go in.
I should mention that you're a very accomplished musician, and your parents were very supportive of you choosing art.
Musician, yeah, I love music. I'm the ward choir director in my ward, and I love that calling. I could be in that calling for years and years, and I wouldn't mind. Walk
around your new exhibit, and I know that a few of folks been already asking me, as an LDS community, especially in art, we don't see a lot of wings and halos. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the Bible has some very interesting imagery. It talks about wings specifically. I don't think that it mentions anything about halos, but I served my mission in the Rome, Italy mission, and I'm influenced a lot by some of the early and middle Christian art and Renaissance art.
Sure.
That a lot of those sacred pieces depict angels with wings and halos. As far as I'm concerned, they're beautiful shapes, they're beautiful symbols of the power of heaven.
Yeah, divinity.
Yeah. So, I think in maybe in some cases it's easier for us to read those scriptures and think of them in symbolic ways than it is to see visual representations and translate those into symbols.
Sure.
But I think that's just something that a lot of exposure to visual symbols will help us to do, is to realize these are symbols.
Sure, and especially the round halo for divinity, divine personage, and angels with the beautiful wings. And you do so well, and they're
Thank you.
beautiful. And it's almost became your trademark when I see religious art, contemporary religious art, and I see halos and beautiful wings, and I immediately, oh, is that at Kirk's?
Well, I appreciate that. I think it's not, I can't lay claim to those by any means, but, you know, and in fact, I think maybe one of the influences that brought me to do those is also one of my teachers, James Christensen, that
Sure.
often painted angels with wings.
Yeah.
And even, you know, Karl Bloch is not LDS per se, but certainly his imagery is used widely by Latter-day Saints. And
Absolutely. It's a method of portraying to the viewers the identity of the personage.
Yeah, there are a few things that would signify that a figure is an angel. One might be that that there's light emanating from the figure, or that the figure might be suspended in air, and other ways would be wings and halos.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. So when you plan these exhibits, or when you are ready to paint, do you ever get stuck in the middle? And how do you solve it?
All the time, yeah. I think I'd be surprised if an artist didn't get stuck. For me, it's a question of setting the piece aside for a while and coming back with a fresh eye, maybe weeks later, maybe even months later. And you know, there's a risk in doing a show of all new work, and that is that you might be stuck with some of the pieces, and that's certainly the case with this show. I think even after this exhibit, I'll continue to develop some of the pieces and hopefully find answers that have eluded me up to this moment.
Okay, wonderful. I mean, once you were, before J. Kirk Richards' name became pretty prominent in our Contemporary Art Society, you were once a young student who's just started out. Do you have any advice for young art students who's just trying to figure it out?
Yeah, well, I think that feeling remains. I still feel like I'm a young student trying to figure it out. But I think my advice would be to I think part of the trick is finding an individual voice, and I think that comes from having a kind of vision for where you want your art to go, but also letting your teachers and professionals around you give you advice to help you lift that vision. It can be easy to get swept away in other people's visions of what you should do. So it's a balancing act of saying, well, this is where I want to go. You know, how can I improve my own ability to bring that vision across to other people?
And then I think it's easy to be persuaded by what is popular, the trend.
Absolutely.
For a new student.
But the thing is, ultimately, it's unfulfilling to ride somebody else's expertise or genius. So ultimately, the idea is to find your own path and to do that as well as you can. I think some other things that might be helpful, that certainly were helpful to us getting started, were to jump right in. You know, a lot of people say, I'm going to do this for a while until I can become a gallery artist or whatever kind of artist they want to become. And I think my recommendation is to go straight for that ultimate goal.
You just dove in.
Yeah.
As success or failure, you just do it.
And then another aspect of that is to make decisions that allow you to spend as much time as possible working towards that goal. So some of the things that my wife and I did were to keep our expenses very low so I could spend as much time as possible painting in the early years, and that ended up working for us.
Yeah. I remember one of my painting professors a long time ago told me, oh, I think I may have complained. I don't think I can make it. And he had said something like, I don't know if that's an encouraging or discouraging way of teaching someone, but he said, well, try paint 50 paintings and you just might get one good one.
Mm-hmm.
But I took that as a positive advice, because then as you practice and you paint, you get better at it, and you know what you want by the time you paint 50 of them.
Yeah, absolutely. The more work that you can do, the more you'll begin to notice what your voice is, and the better and better, each piece gets, which isn't to say, I think some of my early pieces were really good, and also some of them were really bad. And today I try to capture some of that energy that I had when I was first coming out of college. Some of that freshness, it can be hard to get back to, but I love to do what I'm doing, and I'm just excited about continuing to develop.
Yeah. So, you're almost the signature pieces with all the religious art. Besides those, does anything else that inspires you?
Well, I'm inspired by the work of so many artists, and not all of those artists paint overtly religious work. And when I'm not painting religious work, I've done a few portraits. I've done some landscapes. I think, but I always come back to works that deal with some aspect of our earthly journey and kind of the spiritual struggle of progression. Those kinds of things are really where my heart is at, and I think where your heart is at is where you're going to make the best imagery. Yeah,
wonderful. So, you talked about your college years, and you've been painting for a long time. So do people ask you a lot if you have favorite pieces or some of the ones that you're attached more?
Yeah, absolutely. That question comes up a lot. It's a hard question to answer because I think we keep a list of the pieces, and I think I'm in about the 1,300 range or something. So there's a lot, and to some extent they're all my babies. But like I mentioned, I love some of those early pieces that I did. The Last Supper, Cherubim and a Flaming Sword. More recently, I've done some pieces, Every Knee Shall Bow, The Garden Tomb, that have, a lot of people have responded to,
right.
And I love those pieces.
And they're very well known too. And you have prints available in stores and online.
Yeah. And that's been something that's developed gradually too, So we're excited to be able to offer those to anybody who wants to have an image.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. The exhibit is called The Trumpet Shall Sound, Angels and Messengers in the Bible. What do you hope for viewers to walk away with?
I hope that they will leave the exhibit with a sense of a living faith that God speaks to us individually today. I think it's one of the reasons to have a contemporary art show that speaks of God communicating to us is to reinforce that idea that He speaks to us today.
Yeah. And the paintings are wonderful, and sculptures, I should say. They're magnificent, and I hope you enjoy a time here in Rexburg. And thank you for coming.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you, Kyung.